what are the various data types in a TypeScript. So how we define the type? So let, variable name, colon, and what data type it has to handle. And we need to know that the root type for the root type for all data types in TypeScript is any. The root type for all data types is any. That means any is a type that can handle any value. Any is a type that can handle any value. Any is the root type for all the data types. That means the root type for all data types is any. And any can handle any type of value. And the data types, all data types in TypeScript are derived from this any type actually. That means you should know that all data types in TypeScript are derived from any type. Any is the base type for all types. That means you can say that it is the base type. It is the base type for all types. It is the base type for all types. And important is the data types are classified into two types actually. Two major categories. That means the TypeScript data types. So the root type for all the data types in TypeScript is any. Any is the root type for all the data types in TypeScript. All data types in TypeScript are derived from any type. Any is the root type for all the types. And the data types in TypeScript are mainly classified into two categories. The data types are classified into two categories. We have primitive types, and we have non-primitive types. The data types are mainly categorized into two groups. We have primitive types and we have non-primitive types. So, and these two types are derived from the base type any. Any is the base type for all the data types. Any is the base type for all the data types. All data types in TypeScript are derived from any type, and they are mainly classified into two types. We have primitive types and we have non-primitive types. Primitive types and non-primitive types. What are primitive types and what are non-primitive types? What is difference between the primitive and non-primitive types? Let's see. What are the primitive and non-primitive types and how we can handle the primitive and non-primitive types? What is difference between them? What are those types and how to handle those types? This is important. Actually, what are primitive types and what are non-primitive types? Let's see one important point. Generally, when you are knowing about data types, the first important you should know that usually primitive types means the primitive types, when you declare a primitive types, they are stored. Primitive types are stored. They are stored. Primitive types are stored in a memory stack. The primitive types are stored in a memory stack. The primitive types are usually stored in a memory stack. They are stored in a memory stack. Memory stack means actually stack uses a mechanism. Stack uses a mechanism called last in, first out. They are stored in a memory stack, and stack uses a mechanism called last in, first out. And important is the primitive types usually have a fixed range for value. They have a fixed range for value. That means it is not like unlimited. We have a fixed range for value. That means we can exactly define, and we can exactly tell that the value will be within this range. It will be between this and this, minimum and maximum. That means either this or this, minimum this or maximum this. So that means they have a fixed range for value. They are stored in a memory stack. They have a fixed range for values. So primitive types usually are stored in memory stack and they have a fixed range for value. And very important is the primitive types are stored in a memory, memory reference. Primitive types their values are stored in a memory reference and directly accessed by using the memory name. So memory reference name. They are directly accessed by using memory reference name. The values are stored in a memory reference and they are directly accessed by using that memory reference name. That means the memory allocated for that value is used to access that value directly. I will show you the practical, we will see those points here. That is what actually the primitive type concept is. So what are primitive types and how we can deal with the primitive types, right? And what is the reference non-primitive types and how we can handle with the non-primitive types. Let's see one simple basic example for that to understand. That means the basic overview. That means how actually they work. So a simple basic overview how they actually work. Generally, the memory allocated for primitive types and the memory allocated for the non-primitive types. How the memory is allocated for primitive and non-primitive types. Usually what happens is for primitive and non-primitive types. So for primitive types, we are using primitive types. A memory is allocated for a primitive type. So a memory is allocated for the primitive type. So a memory is allocated for the primitive type. And important, this memory is a stacked memory. That means it uses a mechanism called last in, first out. That means when you are storing values, the first value comes here. That is x is equal to 10. That is value. And when the second value comes here, then what happens is when the second value comes, this x value will move down. And the second value will come here, y is equal to, that means it will come here, y is equal to 20, like this. That means this is existing value is pushed down. That means the last value that you inserted, that is the first value that comes out. It uses the mechanism last in, first out. And very important is the memory allocated for a primitive type will have a fixed range. That means fixed range for the value. That means you can exactly tell that the value can be between minimum this and maximum that. That means exactly we can tell the value range. It is not like it is not known. It is exactly known that the value will be within this range or value will be this or that. That means primitive types, the values are fixed. That means the range is fixed. That means fixed range for the value. That is important. And another